I used to think blood was thicker than water. Turns out, I was raised on someone else's bloodline. My name is Ethan Cole. I grew up believing I was the son of Daniel Cole, CEO of Cole Dynamics, a Fortune 500 tech conglomerate headquartered in Dallas. My mother, Margaret Cole, was the elegant face of every charity gala in the city. My father built his empire from scratch, the American dream in its sharpest suit. And I was supposed to be his disappointment. From as early as I could remember, I felt like a guest in my own house. Every word I spoke seemed to echo wrong. My father's glances skipped over me, like he was searching for someone else behind my face. My mother was kind, yes, but reserved, as if she loved me out of duty, not instinct. The only person who treated me like I mattered was Aunt Grace, my mother's younger sister. She'd tell me I reminded her of someone she couldn't quite name. By the time I hit 25, I'd accepted it. I wasn't the heir my father wanted. That role was reserved for Ryan Turner, the son of my father's oldest friend and business partner, Richard Turner. Ryan was everything I wasn't: confident, charming, the golden boy of every board meeting. My father treated him like the son he never had. Except, as I'd soon learn, Ryan was exactly that. It started with an accident, a forgotten file, a wrong email chain. I was managing minor analytics at Cole Dynamics, far below any room that mattered. One late night, I was tracing budget discrepancies for a quarterly report when I found a private payroll transfer, a series of unregistered transactions linking my father's personal account to Richard Turner's private trust. It didn't make sense, it wasn't company-related, and the sums were consistent, almost ritualistic. Curiosity is a dangerous thing when you grow up feeling unseen. So I dug deeper. Hidden behind encrypted folders, I found a series of old legal files labeled Infant Transfer, Confidential, dated the year I was born. It was vague, references to medical adjustment, identity exchange, and guardianship revision. The legal jargon was tight, professional. But my stomach twisted. These weren't the words you used for adoption. These were the words you used to hide something. It took me 3 sleepless nights to decrypt the rest. And when I did, my entire world collapsed into one truth. I had been swapped at birth. The files detailed an agreement between Daniel Cole and Richard Turner. Their wives had both delivered on the same night, at the same hospital. Richard's child, the real heir to Cole Dynamics, had been stillborn. My father's child, me, was alive and healthy. But Daniel Cole, obsessed with maintaining a spotless image and perfect heir, made a choice that only a man corrupted by legacy could make. He switched the infants. Ryan Turner, raised as Richard's son, was in fact Daniel Cole's biological child. And me? I was the son of Richard Turner, an engineer who had been forced out of his own company and faded into quiet ruin. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen. Rage was too small a word. My entire existence, every rejection, every cold glance, every word left unsaid, suddenly made perfect sense. My father hadn't seen me because I was never his son. He'd known that all along. When I confronted my mother, she broke. The truth wasn't a theory anymore, it was a confession. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I didn't know until years later, Ethan. He told me it was to protect the company. He said it would all be fine if no one ever found out." I wanted to scream, to tear the world down, but instead I walked out. Revenge isn't about rage, it's about control. That night, standing under the buzzing streetlight outside the Cole estate, I made a promise to myself. I would take back everything that was stolen from me, not with violence, but with strategy. I wouldn't destroy Daniel Cole. I would make him see me. And when he finally did, it would be too late for him to undo what I'd become. The first step was erasing my trail. I copied every document, every signature, every digital fingerprint, and uploaded them to a secure offline drive. Then I started building my second life, quietly, methodically. I resigned from Cole Dynamics within a week, under the polite excuse of pursuing independent ventures. My father didn't even ask why. I joined Turner Innovations, a struggling engineering consultancy, the company my real father had once built before Daniel Cole bought him out and left him bankrupt. Most of its offices were abandoned, its employees long gone. But in that dust and failure, I saw my foundation. For months, I worked alone, repairing what was left. I leveraged my inside knowledge from Cole Dynamics, Not to steal, but to outthink them. My aim wasn't revenge yet, it was rebirth. I began developing small-scale automation tools, systems that could streamline corporate efficiency at a fraction of Coal Dynamics' cost. Slowly, quietly, investors started noticing. Within a year, Turner Innovations was back on the radar, small but fierce, independent. And then, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I received a call from Harold Green, the Chief Financial Officer of Coal Dynamics. He'd been at my father's side for over 2 decades, a man known for loyalty and silence. "Ethan," he said, his tone heavy, "Daniel's been asking about you. He doesn't like surprises." "Tell him," I replied, "he raised one." A year after leaving Coal Dynamics, I had turned Turner Innovations from a forgotten relic into a rising competitor. We weren't massive, just efficient, lean, and agile. We built custom automation systems that cut costs in logistics and data infrastructure, underbidding Coal Dynamics by 30% and delivering twice as fast. The irony: half the patents were born from concepts my father's own engineers had rejected years ago. I wasn't out to burn his empire, not yet. I wanted to starve it slowly. Corporate warfare isn't about emotion, it's about patience. You can't swing blindly. You move pieces, not fists. And I was building a chessboard where every piece had my fingerprints on it. To everyone else, I was Ethan Turner, a self-made entrepreneur, the son of the late Richard Turner who'd revived his father's vision. To the press, I was a redemption story. To my father, I was a ghost from a past he'd rather erase. When Coal Dynamics started losing mid-tier contracts to Turner Innovations, Daniel Coal called for an emergency strategy meeting. I knew because Harold Green, the CFO who'd quietly warned me before, leaked me the internal memo. It was a 6-page document titled Threat Assessment, Turner Innovations. My company was officially a threat. I couldn't stop smiling when I read that. Ryan, of course, was tasked with neutralizing us. He'd been promoted to Vice President of Strategic Expansion, a title my father used like a leash. Ryan was charming, ruthless in negotiation, and utterly convinced he'd built his own success. But I knew his foundation was stolen. He just didn't know from whom. Our first real encounter in years happened at a tech conference in Chicago. He didn't recognize me at first, not truly. The Turner name threw him off, and I'd changed more than my title. My voice carried confidence now, my clothes fit better, and I spoke like someone who belonged in the same room as him. "Ethan Turner," I said, shaking his hand. "Big F.A. N of Coal Dynamics. You guys set the standard." He grinned. "Polished. Perfect. Appreciate that. We've been following your progress too." Surprising to see Turner Innovations back, not realizing how literal that statement was. That meeting changed everything. Within months, Ryan reached out for a potential collaboration, a joint venture proposal. Coal Dynamics would partner with Turner Innovations to co-develop a supply chain optimization system. On paper, it was a merger of equals. In reality, it was a test. My father wanted to see what I was made of. I accepted. For the next 6 months, I worked alongside Ryan and his team. I sat in the same rooms I used to walk through as a forgotten intern, now as a partner shaking hands with the CEO's son. Every meeting was a battlefield, subtle, polite, corporate warfare wrapped in coffee and smiles. Ryan underestimated me from day one. He mistook composure for weakness, charm for inexperience. But he didn't realize that I already knew how he thought, because his instincts were inherited from the same man who built my prison. One afternoon, during a review session, Ryan leaned back and said, "You're sharp, Turner. I can see why investors are chasing you. My father keeps saying we need more people like you at Coal." I looked him in the eye. "Maybe one day you'll find out just how much like me you really are." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. While the partnership moved forward publicly, I began executing my second layer, the silent acquisition. Through a network of shell companies and investors, I started buying out small suppliers tied to Coal Dynamics infrastructure. Not the big ones, just the ones no one paid attention to: raw data vendors, analytic subcontractors, compliance auditors. By the time my father realized what was happening, Turner Innovations indirectly controlled 18% of his internal ecosystem. That was the first checkmate, quiet, invisible, and devastating. But power doesn't come without consequences. Success draws eyes, and mine weren't all friendly. A month later, I received an unmarked envelope at my office. Inside was a single photograph, me at the Chicago conference, shaking Ryan's hand. On the back, in neat handwriting, "He doesn't know who you are, yet." Someone was watching. Someone inside the Cole circle who knew the truth. At first, I thought it might be Harold, the CFO, but the handwriting was feminine, elegant. My instincts told me it was Lena Moore, Cole Dynamics' chief legal counsel. She was smart, observant, and far too quiet during meetings. I'd seen her studying me once, not the way a lawyer studies a rival, but like someone trying to solve a puzzle. I decided not to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I focused on the next move, the Cole board election. Every 3 years, the board restructured, promoting internal executives and renewing outside partnerships. Whoever controlled the board controlled the company. My father always made sure the votes were unanimous, until this year, when 2 of his loyalists were retiring and new members needed nominating. I saw my chance. Using Turner Innovations' growing reputation, I positioned myself as an independent nominee representing emerging partnerships. Publicly, it looked like a PR stunt, a young entrepreneur representing the next generation of innovators. Privately, it was the perfect infiltration. Ryan supported it. My father didn't. In a board meeting streamed live for investors, Daniel Cole said, "Turner's young. Ambitious, yes. But he lacks the legacy to understand what this company stands for." I smiled and replied, "Sometimes, Mr. Cole, legacy is just a story told by the ones who took it." The silence that followed was delicious. By the end of that quarter, I had secured my nomination. I was now officially on the Cole Dynamics Board of Directors, sitting 2 seats away from the man who stole my life. The game had entered its final act. But just as I prepared for the next phase, I received an unexpected visitor. Margaret Cole, my mother. She walked into my office one afternoon, dressed in gray, the color of storms. "I know who you are," she said quietly. "And I know what you're doing." I didn't deny it. "I'm fixing what he broke," I said. Tears welled in her eyes. "You're not like him, Ethan. Don't let his sins shape your life. He doesn't deserve your hate." I looked away. "It's not about hate. It's about balance." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph, a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. "This was you," she whispered. "You were perfect. He just didn't want to share perfection." By the time I joined the Cole Dynamics board, the company had shifted beneath my father's feet. The press painted me as the disruptive outsider. Investors called me the future. My father called me a risk. He wasn't wrong. Every board meeting was a duel in disguise, polite smiles, coded insults, and strategic sabotage masked as innovation. Ryan tried to play mediator, still convinced I was just an ambitious partner trying to prove something. My father, though, had started to suspect. I could see it in his eyes during every presentation, every handshake, the flicker of recognition he couldn't quite name. He saw something of himself in me, and it terrified him. I spent my nights building files, not for profit, but for revelation. I cataloged everything: the original hospital records, the forged legal transfers, the hidden payments to the doctor who performed the exchange. Every document was a weapon, and when the time was right, I'd aim it where it hurt most, the Cole name. But someone else was already moving behind the scenes. One morning, a courier delivered a sealed envelope marked with the Cole Dynamics insignia. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a transcript of an internal memo between my father and Lena Moore, the company's general counsel. It read, "Keep an eye on Ethan Turner. There are inconsistencies in his background. Do not alert Ryan." There it was, confirmation that Lena was watching me. But the part that caught my attention was the last line, scribbled in her handwriting at the bottom. "He deserves the truth, even if Daniel won't give it to him." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning, or maybe a confession. That night, I invited Lena for a quiet dinner at a private restaurant downtown. She arrived exactly on time, calm, professional, and composed, the kind of woman who'd built her career cleaning up other people's secrets. "I assume this isn't about compliance," she said, sitting down. "No," I replied. "It's about truth." She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "I know who you are, Ethan. Or at least, who you're supposed to be." I leaned forward. "Then say it." She took a deep breath. "You're Daniel Cole's real son. The one he gave away. I found the hospital records months ago." I stayed silent, letting the words settle. Finally, she said, "I also know about Richard Turner, your biological father. He wasn't the man you think he was." That hit harder than I expected. "What do you mean?" "Your father, Richard, didn't just get forced out of Cole Dynamics. He helped Daniel orchestrate the swap. It was his idea." My throat went dry. "That's impossible. He lost everything." Lena shook her head. "He didn't lose. He gambled. Daniel promised him equity. Why, in a side venture, something off the books. But after the swap, Daniel betrayed him, cut him out completely. By the time Richard realized what he'd done, it was too late. His guilt consumed him." I didn't say a word. I felt the ground shift beneath me. 4 years, I'd seen my father, Daniel, as the sole villain. But now I realized both men had built their empires on lies. One for ambition, the other for desperation. Lena slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything I just told you is here. Documents, recordings, correspondence. Use it how you want. But understand this, revenge rarely ends with justice. Usually, it just replaces one tyrant with another." I stared at the drive for a long time before picking it up. "I'm not replacing anyone," I said. "I'm correcting history." But her words stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, I studied the files. Everything she'd said was true. My real father, Richard Turner, had made a deal with Daniel, a trade between sons and shares, power and peace. The guilt had eaten him alive until he died quietly, a broken man no one remembered. I wanted to hate him, but part of me understood him. Because I was standing on the same edge now. As the next board election approached, Daniel Cole's hold on the company began to crumble. Investors whispered doubts. Rumors spread about unethical practices. And when I leaked a few select documents, anonymized, strategic, it ignited a slow corporate fire. Stock values wavered. Board members questioned his leadership. The empire he'd built on deceit was starting to fold under its own weight. But victory didn't taste sweet. It tasted hollow. One evening, Ryan showed up at my office unannounced. He looked shaken, not angry, just confused. "Dad's losing it," he said. "He's been paranoid, obsessed with this idea that someone's trying to destroy him from the inside." "Ethan, are you?" I didn't answer. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You know, I used to think I had everything figured out. But lately, I don't even know who I am in this company. Maybe I never did." That irony almost made me laugh. He had no idea how close he was to the truth. He stood to leave, then paused. "You're the only person here who talks to me like an equal. Whatever you're planning, just don't become him." After he left, I sat in the dark for hours. His words echoed in my head. Don't become him. Revenge had always felt righteous, but for the first time, I questioned what I was building. Was I fighting to reclaim my name, or just repeating the cycle? A week later, my father summoned me to his office, the same office I'd once walked past as an invisible intern. The walls were lined with awards, photographs, decades of triumphs. But the man behind the desk looked smaller now, worn down by secrets he couldn't control. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "you've made quite a name for yourself." "So have you," I replied. He studied me. "You remind me of someone." I smiled faintly. "Maybe you should." Silence stretched between us like a fault line. Finally, he said, "You're trying to destroy me." I met his eyes. "No. I'm trying to reveal you." He laughed. Hollow, bitter. "You think you can take what I built?" "I already have," I said softly. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he leaned back and whispered, "Who are you?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw not a monster, but a man haunted by the empire he'd created. "I'm the son you gave away," I said. "And I'm here to take back what's mine." He froze. The color drained from his face. For the first time in my life, Daniel Cole looked powerless. The morning of the Cole Dynamics annual summit felt different. The air inside the downtown convention hall was heavy. Cameras, investors, media, and a few hundred employees waiting for the company's yearly address. 4 years, Daniel Cole had stood on that stage, a symbol of success. Today, he would face the truth he'd buried for 3 decades. And I was the one who would deliver it. The boardroom behind the stage was tense. Ryan paced near the window, his usual confidence fractured. My father sat at the head of the table, staring at a copy of the day's financial brief, the numbers red, bleeding. "Ethan," he said finally, "if you think you can humiliate me in front of my people, you're mistaken. Whatever you've got, it dies here." I leaned forward, placing a small drive on the table. "It already lived too long." His eyes flicked to the drive, then to me. "You don't understand what this will do." "I understand perfectly," I said. "It'll set things right." Ryan looked between us. "What's going on?" Neither of us answered. The truth wasn't his to carry yet. Not until it was public. I walked out before my father could speak again. As I reached the stage entrance, I caught sight of Margaret Cole standing in the wings, graceful, composed, her hands clasped tight. She didn't know the details, but something in her eyes said she understood enough. I nodded to her softly, and she gave the faintest nod back, the kind that meant, whatever happens, I'll face it. When my name was announced, the applause was polite but uncertain. Ethan Turner, they called me. The outsider. The disruptor. The young board member who had turned a forgotten brand into a rival powerhouse. I stepped up to the podium and took a slow breath. "Thank you," I began. Cole Dynamics has always prided itself on innovation, transparency, and integrity. But sometimes the stories we build our empires on are the very lies that destroy them. The room quieted instantly. I projected a slide on the massive screen behind me. Hospital records, legal transfers, payments, all time-stamped from decades ago. Gasps rippled through the audience. "These," I said, "are records showing that Daniel Cole and Richard Turner conspired to switch their newborn sons. One for legacy, one for leverage. One to preserve a name, the other to survive under it." The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Today," I continued, "I'm here to return what was taken. Not just a name, a truth." Daniel Cole rose from his seat near the front row, his face pale. "Enough!" he shouted. "You have no proof." I clicked to the next slide, a video clip. It was Lena Moore's deposition, recorded privately and authenticated. Her calm voice filled the hall. "I have verified all related documents and signatures. The swap occurred under Daniel Cole's authorization. The evidence is indisputable." The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. Investors whispered. It was over. I looked down at him, the man who'd built an empire on deceit, who'd raised another man's son and treated his own like a stranger. "Mr. Cole," I said softly, "you always told me legacy was everything. I suppose it still is." Then I stepped off the stage. The fallout was immediate. The board called an emergency vote within the hour. Daniel Cole was removed as CEO, pending investigation. The company's shares plummeted briefly, until investors realized Turner Innovations was prepared to merge and stabilize operations. By the end of the week, the board appointed Ethan Turner as the new interim CEO, not for revenge, but for recovery. Publicly, I was still the son of Richard Turner, a symbol of redemption. Privately, Daniel Cole knew the truth, and that was enough. Ryan resigned quietly. He never looked me in the eye again. I didn't blame him. He wasn't guilty, just a casualty of someone else's ambition. A week later, he left for Europe, maybe to start over. Maybe to forget. But Daniel stayed. He didn't fight the charges. Didn't give interviews. He just stopped showing up. One afternoon, Harold Green called me and said, "He's at the lake house. Hasn't spoken in days." I went. The place was quiet, An echo of wealth turned into isolation. My father sat by the water, a blanket over his shoulders, staring at the reflection of the house shimmering on the surface. "You won," he said without turning. "There wasn't a prize," I replied. He was silent for a while. "You remind me of me. The way you think, the way you move people like pieces." "I learned from the best," I said. He gave a bitter smile. "And that's the tragedy." For a long time, we just sat there. No anger left, no triumph, just two men bound by choices neither could undo. Finally, he said, "I signed over the inheritance. All of it. The estate, the company shares, everything. You'll find the papers in my study." I looked at him, startled. "Why?" He sighed. "Because it's yours. It always was. You're my son, whether I deserve to say it or not." I didn't thank him. I didn't forgive him. I just stood and walked away. That was enough. When I delivered the signed transfer documents to the board the next week, they confirmed his full divestment. The Cole fortune, his life's work, was now legally in my name. Margaret attended the signing, her hand trembling slightly as she placed the final signature. After the ceremony, she approached me privately. "You were kind to him," she said quietly. "After everything." He never said it, but I think he knew. I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's enough." She looked at me, eyes wet. "Richard Turner would be proud of you." For a moment, I almost told her the truth, that she was my real mother. That I was the son she'd loved but never truly seen. But I stopped myself. Some truths heal. Others destroy. So I said instead, "I hope so," and walked away. Months later, Cole Dynamics and Turner Innovations merged officially under a new banner. Cole, Turner Group. The press called it a historic partnership, a symbol of reconciliation in corporate America. No one knew how literal that phrase was. Under my leadership, the company rebuilt its reputation from the ground up: transparency, accountability, reform. For the first time, the name Cole stood for something honest. And sometimes, late at night in my office, I'd find myself staring at the old family photo that had once hung in Daniel's study, the one with him, Margaret, and Ryan. I'd added a copy of another photo beside it, me, years younger, holding my father Richard's old wrench in the Turner workshop. Two fathers. One who lied to save himself. One who lied to survive. And a son who turned both lies into truth. Revenge had been the fire that forged me. But in the end, it wasn't revenge that mattered. It was what I built after the ashes. Epilogue. A year later, I visited Daniel one last time. He was frail, sitting on the porch of the lake house, eyes distant but clear. "I thought you wouldn't come," he said. "I didn't plan to," I admitted. "But I wanted you to know, I kept the name. Both of them. Cole and Turner. Because neither of us deserved to erase the other." He nodded slowly, a faint smile breaking across his face. "That's fair." As I turned to leave, he called out softly, "Ethan." "Yeah." "I'm glad you were the one who won." For the first time in my life, I believed him.